the Ken Rosenthal's and the Tom Verducci's,
Sure.
and those in
Good
my
goals.
eyes, my heroes in some regards because of where they are and the professionalism that both of them exude. What advice would you give to somebody such as me who really wants to be that kind of person someday?
I think you've already begun it, and I know you're going to continue it, and that is to be as involved and get as much experience as you possibly can at the youngest of ages. And with that will come momentum, and it will gain, and you will find yourself adding to your resume and to your experience and to your contacts year by year, month by month. And that will give you an enormous jump on mainstream applicants who are not going to have set as good a pace as you have. And with that, Louis, I think comes a need, obviously, to have some degree of basic ability. You've got that and then some. So that part is simply going to continue to grow and develop. But starting as young as you are, and again, getting your enthusiasm and your passion harnessed to experience will carry you with almost a degree of propulsion, jet propulsion, higher and higher. It will. It worked that way for me. It's worked that way for John Morosi or
another great Detroit local, correct?
Friends for years and years and years. And of course, I covered other sports just as much as I covered baseball. I simply concentrated on that more the last 10 to 12 years. But I've covered everything, and I love covering everything. And I think that's also important. You want to be a journalist first and a sports writer second.
Well, it's amazing how you say that, Lynn. I actually got into the business. I was a lifelong sports fan growing up in Metro Detroit, but I got my first opportunity 40 years ago as well. So like you said, that has a lot of merit to it, and you and I have had a lot of great memories through the years, but I think one of the most enjoyable ones recently was when you and I were over at the Astros old facility in Kissimmee, Florida.
Right.
And remember when I told you that the last time I was at that stadium was covering the Florida State League All-Star game, and I could not get my story transferred, and I had to dictate a 25-inch story and two things right over the phone. And yet, I said, we won't have that problem today, but it was just unbelievable. I'm with you, and I'm trying to mentor Louis along the best I can. But you cannot mentor a work ethic and passion. Either you've got it or you don't. You know what I mean?
True.
And, anytime you're a lifer like he is. And my mentor, Lynn, growing up early was a guy by the name of Tony DeMarco.
Yeah.
Tony taught me quite a bit, too. I don't know how much you work with Tony.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, and again, we were all blessed to have had important people along the timeline, and Louis will have his, and then at some point, a young guy will be counting on his particular perspective and counsel, too. So you do give it back as much as we've been blessed to have received it.
Right. I don't want to leave out Tom Gage either, because Tom Gage, to me, is one of the greatest people, let alone excellent writers I've ever seen. There's no way that we could be on the phone without talking about Tommy.
Oh, no. Tom and I worked together for decades, and absolutely true. And again, you find that there are people all through your life who have impact. And the younger that you begin as Louis is, the more those people accrue. And he's going to have that benefit and blessing throughout his years in this business. I have no doubt about that. Louis is going to have a great career.
Well, while we have another 7 minutes to go, Lynn, I guess Louis was chomping at the bit to talk about Jack Morris. So if you can do it in about 6.5 minutes, you can get it
So
out.
I feel like we've established a pretty good rapport here. I don't want to damage it considering his place in Tigers lore, but I know it's a little late to discuss it, but he was finally elected to the Hall of Fame 2 years ago. Where do you stand on that? I have my reservations about it, and I'm sure that the appeal comes from the fact that he won 162 games in the 80s and that 10-inning shutout against John Smoltz in 91 when he was a Twin. But the overall numbers for me just don't tell the case of somebody who belongs in the Hall of Fame, as the case I can make for Catfish Hunter, which is a piece I wrote earlier this year. I just don't believe that, a guy like Jack Morris did enough as far as compiling numbers, and I'm somebody who uses sabermetrics as a means of telling a bigger story. I like the peripheral numbers because they tell us more than what, batting average and, say hits and RBIs, contextual stats relative to teams can tell you. But what is your stance on Morris?
You just summed it up, Louis, and that has created one of the real bruises for me, I think, professionally, because I did not vote for Jack for the reasons that you cite. His numbers for me were just a bit too weak. And that's not to say it was an invalid candidacy. No, it was on the fringe. And yet it didn't cross the threshold for me. And yet, because I make my vote public and always have made it public, and because I had a good professional relationship with Jack Morris all through that time in Detroit, he took it very personally and was very wounded by my decision to not vote for him. And of course, some people wanted to think that, well, he wasn't very good in the clubhouse, he was nasty. No, he wasn't. He was fine. And that is always cited as some kind of a condition for a vote. It's not. I'm not saying that there aren't occasional people who probably will vote along those lines. I'm sure there is always a handful, but only a handful and not enough to really significantly affect votes. No, it comes down to whether or not the person, and this is for anyone who takes pride in their ballot, considers that person's achievements to be Cooperstown worthy. And Jack fell a little shy for me. And it's interesting to hear you cite that, Louis, because that has been exactly my evaluation. The numbers, I believe, in fact, did leave him just a brick shy of a load. And I couldn't justify the vote for him.
I mean, if you want to cite a metric like wins above replacement, 43.4 WAR for Jack Morris. The average WAR for a starting pitcher is 73.
Mm-hmm.
By WAR, Jack Morris is the 168th best pitcher of all time. And what I don't like about the Morris induction is that it kind of waters down what is a very elusive club. What we love about what separates baseball from other sports is you really have to be good. You have to put up a peak that is significant, a 7 to say 9 to 10 year stretch of dominance or at least high level play, which in my mind is 5 wins above replacement per season. It's why Lou Whitaker should be in, but he's not. And, say what you want about his clubhouse reputation, but,
No, and his clubhouse reputation is completely overblown. He was fine. He had that one petulant year in '84, but that was more amusing than it was anything. But Louis, the numbers you cite are absolutely empirical, and for me, there was no debate. But I want to tell you, one of my best friends, he just about was ready to give up on me. I mean, he was mad, angry, and the most fire I've ever seen him in my life, because he believed Jack Morris, with all of his conviction, belonged in the Hall. Well, no, he doesn't.
I mean, if you want to get into...
he's there, so I guess he belongs. Yeah. But yeah, statistically, numerically, and I think by any fair assessment of the numbers, no, he's right where you said he is.
Okay, I got a quick question for you, and we can just make it short. Does Mickey Loach deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, or does he ever get in?
Numbers have, again, done him a great service, I think. And I get this question all the time, and it's a fair question. If you're going to vote for Curt Schilling, how can you not vote for Mickey Lolich?
Right.
Louis, you would know, again, based on your own And of course, Jay Jaffe does wonderful work.
Yeah, I have his Cooperstown Casebook, terrific book.
And you have to ask yourself that question.
Now, if we want to use WAR again, Lolich's career WAR is exactly 48. It's below the mark, though. His numbers are a little bit better than Morris. But what discounts his case, and Lolich, a lot of Lolich's value is lost because he pitched in, arguably the best era we've seen for starting pitching ever, the 1960s. Look at his 1968 season. I believe he posted a sub-3 ERA, and they use a metric called ERA+, which takes your ERA into account and gauges it against every other pitcher in the league. Lolich's ERA was sub-100, which 100 is designated as league average. But
see, and that's why numbers are so great, because they do bring a sheen to something that we knew intuitively, but didn't understand as much statistically, and that really turns the light switch on there. But you're right. Overall, I've never considered him to be quite Hall of Fame, because I keep a very, very tight vote. I don't like to offer them generously or liberally because, like Louis has just cited, I want it to continue to be a very special place. I don't want it diluted. And I think there are a few people in there who've diluted it a little bit. Bill Mazeroski, Jim Rice, Ralph Kiner, to name three. Probably Bruce Sutter. And I didn't vote for Jack. Harold Baines.
Harold Baines is another example. 38 career WAR.
This just doesn't work for me. And so, but we have a very critical eye, I think, and I'm glad for that. I'm not going to compromise on it. And I don't mind taking some time in my votes each year. I don't mind leaving a guy off for a year or two as I further ruminate about him and his qualifications, and I consider over months in conversations and looking again at the refracted light of history.
Okay.
I want to make a good choice.
All right, so we'll end it on this note. So you say Lolich you don't think should be in?
No, I would not vote for him, even though, again, the next question is then how can you vote for Schilling? But that gets down into really skin in the cat about the 80th skin there.
Well, you know what, Lynn? We would love to have you back on again if you don't mind it, maybe in a few weeks or so, to talk about baseball playoffs. And I know that Louis is chomping at the bit to ask you some Miguel Cabrera questions. So if you'd be willing to come on, then we can address those the next time around. How does that sound?
I'm happy to do it, Scott and Louis, and good talking with you gentlemen tonight.
All right, thanks for being on the Sports Exchange, Lynn Henning, and we'll be in touch real soon. But you take care, and
Scott.
Thanks for being here, Lynn.
Appreciate it, Lynn.
You too, Scott. You too, Louis.
Take care.
All right, have a good night.
Nice talking.
Thank you. All right, so what are your thoughts about Lynn Henning?
It's nice to see. I mean, what I love about him is, we'll get into Schilling again, but what makes Schilling a more convincing Hall of Fame case than Lolich is that Schilling's numbers were in the context of the era. He pitched in the midst of the steroid era, which, save it for now, but that's the best offensive era we've ever seen. He's striking out 300 batters in a time where he's facing Barry Bonds a couple times a year. He's got the Bombers down in Colorado, the Bank Street Bombers, the Rockies, Dante Bichette, Galarraga. He's facing, a premier offensive, talent. And Schilling benefited from pitching in those eras, and his numbers reflected, somebody who was far above better than most of the competition in his respective era. And I wrote a piece on this. Schilling was one of the 10 best pitchers by WAR during the 2000s. But, he's not in for reasons other than baseball, which is a shame, and you have to look aside them. If we can put Ty Cobb in for his supposed, shortcomings, why not put Curt Schilling in?
Well, again, that we'll see how it plays out. But
absolutely,
my reasons to think that Schilling should be in, if for no other reason, is I think his performance in the postseason warrants the consideration.
It's terrific, but 79.5 wins above replacement, above the average for starting pitchers, 3,000 strikeouts, a box that CC Sabathia checked, and I'm sure Lynn has maybe his reservations as I do about Sabathia, but Sabathia's WAR is 62. That's